Good morning, folks, and welcome to another one of my videos. So I have 4 pairs on watch today. I haven't made a video for a little while because, as many of you will know, I have been a full-time carer to my fiance for a very long time now. But unfortunately, that's a problem that I no longer have. And I say unfortunately because unfortunately she passed away yesterday morning at 5:20 a.m. UK time. So I'm sure you can imagine, this has been a very difficult time for me at the moment. And I'll level with you, the emotion that I've felt these past 24 hours is 100 times greater than I was anticipating. But the show goes on, and the thing that I found in my experience that helps I've not been in a scenario like this, but in difficult scenarios, one of the things that I've found helps is distracting yourself. And in particular, trading. I found that trading is such a methodical thing to do. It's probably the most methodical thing that I actually do in my life, the most sort of kind of analytical thing. And it kind of pulls my brain away from the emotion of everything, which kind of gives me a bit more balance. So I've always found trading to be something which creates a bit more balance from the emotional side. But anyway, thank you very much to those of you within the Falcon community who have sent me messages and comments of support regarding the passing of my fiance. I have made it one of my daily goals today to get back to all of you, or as many of you as possible. So I'll be doing that later today. But thank you very much for that. I'm not someone who needs support. Typically, I just figure things out for myself. I've always been that way and always made a good fist of that. But this is a bit different. This is, I think, honestly, without the support that I've received from people outside of Falcon and within it, I think this would be a lot more difficult for me. It has been difficult, but I think it would be a lot more difficult for me than it has been thus far. But there's purpose in everything. I'm sure that there's lessons in this, that this was meant to be a test for me to make me even stronger than I already am, and we'll find out in due course what I'm being prepared for, I guess. But anyway, let's break these pairs down. So dollar yen, top of the bunch, likely to shape up the soonest if my analysis is correct. So you can see here, you can't see, you've got these gaps here to these lows. Okay, so we've tapped above this high here, and we've retraced more than 50% of the length of the previous bullish candle. So it's likely the case that we're coming down to take out all these lows. When we have these gaps, there's likely a lot of stop orders, stop losses, below each of these lows. So we're likely coming back down to test those lows. You can see if we look at this on the higher time frames, we have, it's not the greatest of sequence, it has to be said, but we have this volume here. We have a big sell-off from there, so that's likely where the liquidity is. There was enough of an exchange of liquidity here to cause price to smash through all of this volume. Sure enough, we tap into that volume, and that's where we react from. Price leaves a bit of a footprint. We come back down, leave a gap to this low, come back up, tap into the hook point, move to the downside, create another footprint. We gap to that ever so slightly. See the gap there? That likely means there's still orders in that area. Come back down, we leave a gap, we break above, likely tap into where all the stops are, move to the downside, and now we're likely pushing to the downside to take out all of these lows and these gaps that we keep leaving. Where are we? Right. So what I'm looking for now is, there was a little entry here. You could have taken that. Not my cup of tea. I'm not really interested in these corrections that are trading through a high like that, especially when, if you just look at this is kind of, on 2 occasions there, this kind of retested the back end of this, okay, with the 2 candles there, which kind of retested the back end of this. So given how wide this correction is relative to the impulse down which has preceded it, these 2 retests there could have been the start of some kind of larger continuation there, which retests the back end of that, and then we come up to create an M-style pattern and then drop from there, which is what happens when these corrections are very wide relative to the move down which has preceded them. However, you can see now we're getting some follow through. Okay, so I'm satisfied now that we're not retesting the back end of all of this, and that we're following through to create a correction potentially to push lower. Okay, so what I'm looking for now is, hold on a minute, let's get on the right thing. There we go. So I'm just looking for a correction, and then any kind of correction. I've got a little Google Calendar reminder to remind me to check this periodically. You could have had that there, but that looks undeveloped to me. Okay, when you see this and then you kind of tap into it like that, it's likely the case that we're forming something deeper to do that, especially when we've narrowly missed the retest to the back end of that. So I wasn't interested in this. If we'd have got something more like that, I would have been interested. But this just looks like an undeveloped structure that's just sold off, and I'm not interested in those. Okay, so now I'm just looking for that correction. We'll see what we get. If price just keeps selling off without providing an entry, then I couldn't care less. I'll just go and do other things. So we'll see what that wants to do, and then I've got plenty of profit potential down to here, providing it does actually play out. With that in mind, I have, just to say that I have taken a couple of losses this month, which I haven't been able to document yet, just because of, I was having to look after my partner and everything. They were both losses for whatever reason. Nobody knows why, least of all me. Well, I don't know why. Maybe other people do, but they didn't play out for whatever reason. But it's all good. Not bothered about that. So we'll move on to the next pair. Aussie Kiwi. So Aussie Kiwi, the sequence typically looks awful on Aussie Kiwi, but it does tend to commit to the higher time frame structures pretty well. So you can see we've tapped into that little hook point there. Tapped into that, kind of created a bit of a double top. There is, I think, on the 4-hour chart, I think there was there's a little bit of a hook point there. We tap into that, move to the downside. We're moving in sequence from here. This is what I like, is that we've got this kind of sequence. There's no excessively sharp pullbacks relative to the overall move down. We create a bit of a hook point there, tap into that, retest the back end of all of this volume. Okay, and now we're getting that bit of a corrective one, but that's how Aussie Kiwi moves a lot of the time. Getting a bit of a sequence there, and we seem to be, I thought that might happen. I thought we might gravitate towards here to retest the back end of all of this, and that's what's happened. So all I'm looking for now, so we tapped into that. So I wasn't interested in anything here, because this could have potentially been this, and then we create something like that to push a bit higher to perhaps tap into that hook point. So I wasn't interested in getting short through here, but now we've dropped out of that consolidation, so that's kind of a bit of a failed bull structure. So now I'm looking for continuations below all of that. And what I'm looking for, just because the sequence is pretty awful, and Aussie Kiwi is a pair which I don't think it's ever I don't think I've ever placed a winning trade on Aussie Kiwi, just because of how unreliable it is. But regardless, so that's why I'm waiting for, partly why I'm waiting for a bit more deliberacy. So I'm looking for a bit of a 15-minute correction here, and then we'll look to get short either within it or on the break. And then we'd have, providing it actually plays out, which is another matter altogether, we'd have 2.5 to 3% down to that low, and then about 4.5 to 5 to that low there, which is what I'd be targeting. So that is Aussie Kiwi. And I've got a reminder set on that to see if we get an entry. Is anything shaping up at the minute? We've got a bit of a hook there. I wouldn't be surprised if, especially looking at how we're pulling back, I wouldn't be surprised if we start pulling into this hook point, and then potentially we get that kind of something more like that, where that becomes the structure. Okay, we'll see what happens. What I might do, actually, I'm going to, as well as the reminder, I'm going to set a little alert there, just to see if we push up to that little hook point. We shall see. So Aussie yen. So Aussie yen, again, there's a lot of messiness going on the market at the minute, but we have a few things. So we do have a gap here to that high, so potentially we could be pushing higher. Okay, and then this ends up with being an M style pattern where we get the correction afterwards, and then we break out of that to retest the high, and then potentially drop from there. That's what we call an M style pattern. Or we're just going to move to the downside from where we are. Okay, because we do have some gaps down here to potentially fill. I'm more inclined on the looking at, let me just, was this the pair I was thinking of? No, I think it was another pair. Yeah, there was another pair I was thinking about. But so what I'm looking for here is one of two things. If we can get the forecast on the chart. So I'm looking for either a structured 1 hour continuation. Okay, so we'd want to see something like, or I'd want to see something like this, so like that, and then I would look to get long. Okay, so a structure that I could see on the 1 hour chart, or I'm waiting for price to drop out of all of this, drop out of this correction so that this becomes a failed bull structure, and then I'll be looking to get short. So I'm looking to see what the market's going to do next. In fact, let's put a little alert down here now. The alerts don't seem to be working today. Right, there we go. So that's not, let's have a look at this. Yeah, that's got no structure to it. So what we're going to do is we're going to set another alert there to see if, what I'm doing there is I'm setting another alert to see if we can push back up, and then I'll set another one back down there to see if we get that. Okay, so I know what I'm doing. I know what I'm looking for. So that is, and then we've got plenty of profit potential. I would be targeting that near miss to the start of all of this volume if I was getting long. And if this shapes up, then I will be targeting this low down here, which happens to be the near miss to that low. And if we were to measure that, that just so happens to be about 90% of the range. So that ties in nicely as well. And then we've got one left, which is euro dollar. So euro dollar is my least favorite just from a sequence perspective, but let's just have a quick look at the dollar index a second. Yeah, okay, so that doesn't look, I wouldn't be surprised if this doesn't shape up on euro dollar, because at the moment this doesn't look like it's positioned to go long. So if euro dollar is not positioned, if the DXY is not positioned to go long, then euro dollar will likely not give the entry for the short, but we shall see. What my thesis is on this, it's a bit messy. You kind of have to go down to the lower time frames, which already I'm not a massive fan of, but we have these gaps here which have been filled. We wick above that, it's a washout candle, then we move to the downside, and then we kind of have this hook point. Again, you have to kind of see this on the 1 hour chart, which is one of the reasons I don't like it, but we've broken above here. We've got the correction and then the move to the downside. We created a hook point, which just so happens to be the retest of the back end of that. And if you think about the fact that 90% of people are trading support and resistance, well, if we were to zone this off, okay, you've even got this here. So a lot of these people will likely have their stop orders just above. If when this breaks below, they think that this is now resistance, a lot of them will have their stops above here. So it's likely we're gravitating back up, and we're doing so correctively. That's an indication as well. It wouldn't surprise me if we tap into that area, tap all the stops that are above this zone, and then start moving to the downside from there. And if we were to just measure this, if I recall, I think I did this a minute ago before I went live, that just happens to be about 50% of this overall range as well, the pullback there. So that kind of ties in mathematically as well. So what I'm looking for is, I'm looking for price to tap into that area of value. And I'm looking for a 15-minute push down, not a 5-minute, because the sequence, the whole thing is just too messy for that. I want a bit more reliability. So we're looking for a tap in, a 15-minute push down. And then I would personally target that low, simply because that one doesn't offer the profit, the 5% profit target, which is the minimum that I require to be able to set a take profit. So I would set the take profit at the next low and then trail my stop loss. And if we do reverse from this area, then we could likely cash in, a couple of percent, but assuming they play out. And that's, in my experience, whether they play out or not is a completely different ballgame. But all we can do is trade past action. Past price action. We don't have a crystal ball, so if these trades don't play out in a live market environment, is what it is. I'm not bothered. I'll just go and do other things. But anyway, that is my forecast for today. I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope it's provided you with some value and some lessons, and I'll see you again in the next one. And once again, thank you very much for all your messages and comments of support. I will get back to you, as many of you as possible, if not all of you, by the end of today.